So now let me talk to you about the 8 hacks for online education and facilitation. The word hack comes from the IT world, and it means like trade secrets or tips for success. And by the way, as you watch this video series, let me encourage you to have your course materials or your lesson plan in front of you and begin to ask yourself, am I doing the things that Jacob is sharing? And if not, how can I begin to apply these 8 hacks into my own teaching and facilitation? Now, the 8 hacks I'm going to share with you are organized into 2 categories. The first category is design. The second category is deliver or delivery. The first hack under design is what I would call chunk content. Chunk content simply means breaking your lesson into small, bite-sized learning objects. So for instance, if you're teaching the book of 2 Peter, you might want to break up your lesson into 3 learning objects, one representing one section of the book, the second one representing another section of the book, and the third one representing the last section of the book. Or if you're teaching soteriology, you might break up your lesson into 4 learning objects, one representing a particular view and the other objects representing different views, theological views on salvation. Or if you're teaching a lesson on situational leadership, you might break up your lesson into 4 learning objects, one representing delegating, one representing supporting, one representing coaching, and the last representing directing. Or if you're teaching a course on worldview, you might break your lesson into 3 different learning objects, one representing beliefs, the other one values, and then the last one maybe feelings. Whatever it may be, whatever topic you may be teaching, your objective is to break it into small bite-sized learning objects. And why do you want to break your lesson into smaller learning objects? Well, it's the same reason why you would break up a big chocolate bar into smaller pieces instead of swallowing the whole thing into your mouth at one go. You see, your brain, specifically your short-term memory, has limited storage capacity, and it can only hold information for a certain period of time. It's kind of like the RAM in your computer, if you will. So it has limited speed and limited capacity. And when information is received in the short-term memory, it works really hard to encode that information and put it into your long-term memory. And when an individual can retrieve that piece of information from long-term memory, we would say that individual has learned something. But when the encoding has gone wrong and the individual cannot retrieve that information later on, we would say the individual has not learned. Now, the reality is, if you try to put too much into your brain at once, you would trigger what's called cognition overload. Basically, what this means is your short-term memory is just feeling overwhelmed, and therefore it has stopped encoding information. Now, technically, information is still entering your brain, but because of cognition overload, your short-term memory no longer encodes. So information just goes in one ear and out the other. And as a result, people are not learning. Well, to prevent cognition overload, there are 2 things you can do. First, remember the rule of 7. The rule of 7 is basically an education concept that came up in the 1950s, but continued to be highly respected in the world of educational psychology. It's based on the brain research that your short-term memory can only hold up to 7 pieces of information. And if you try to add one more piece in there, it will not encode, or it will begin to forget what it has received earlier. So what that means is all your learning objects, all your teaching segment should have less than 7 points. And if you find yourself adding more than 7 points in one learning segment, what you need to do is basically break up those points into smaller groups. So for instance, in this workshop, I'm teaching you 8 hacks, right? 8. Well, 8 is more than 7. So what do? I decided to break up the 8 into 2 groups of 4. That way, each segment is less than 7 points. So that's the rule of 7. As well, when you're talking, when you're giving a lecture or mini lecture, make sure you keep your talk time to less than 15 minutes. In fact, based on my own experience, I have found, if I'm just talking, I can go on for about 8 to 10 minutes. And then after that, people begin to tune out. They begin to lose focus. And a lot of research has been done in this area regarding how long people can stay focused online, watching a video or listening to a lecture. Basically, 15 minutes is pretty much the maximum. Now, I think most of you who have taught on Zoom will realize if you just keep talking, after about 15 minutes, people begin to drift. They begin to tune out. They begin to update the social media or start to do online shopping. So what you need to do is, when you hit 15 minutes, you must stop and do something different. Maybe get them to interact, give them a question to respond, have them answer a poll question. Later on in this video series, I will provide you with some suggestions on how you can keep people's attention. That will ensure they will not tune out. Now, you may be thinking, well, 15 minutes is really not a long time, because most of us teachers can talk for a long time. So the truth is, what you need to do is you do need to abbreviate your lecture. Make sure you keep everything simple, keep it short. Remove redundancy, because in the online environment, people have no patience listening to you talk for a long time. They will feel distracted. And remember, lengthy anecdotes, especially when you begin to talk about your war stories, how you've succeeded in your ministry and how wonderful it's been, oftentimes that becomes really an open invitation for your audience to tune out and to move on to something else. And in fact, most instructional designers would recommend content experts to actually manuscript, write down everything they're going to say. And in that process, they will naturally begin to remove redundancy, to take out anything that's repetitive. And the truth is, a 30-minute lecture, once you manuscript it and take out all the redundancy, may only take about 15 minutes to complete. So the point is, abbreviate what you're going to say, keep it simple, don't include so much unnecessary information, and remove all repetition. And as you do that, you'll be amazed at how much you can fit within a 15-minute segment.